muscles, some muscles of the upper back, the lats.
What's going on YouTube? JPS here, and you're back with my video log. Yes, I'm sick. I've got the man flu. Had some pretty bad congestion through my head, bit of a chest cough, nothing too serious. And we're going to go through some lower body today. I'm going to talk to you guys about whether or not compound movements are king for hypertrophy. And we're going to discuss the role that isolations have in a hypertrophy program and whether or not we even need isolations to build muscle. And we're going to discuss that today. So I'm going to run you through my workout, explain bits and pieces, where I'm at with my training in my contest prep as I prepare for the stage, and we'll talk about how my program is incorporating both compounds and isolation movements and my thoughts on that. Also, we're going to do a giveaway today, so like this video and comment below with what you want to see me talk about in my next video log, and I'm going to select one person whose idea I love and give them one of these fresh AF JPS Sloppy Joes. So, hope you enjoy the video guys. Make sure you comment below. I'll draw the winner within 48 hours of releasing this video, and enjoy guys.
This is meal 1. Protein, oats, berries, almond milk, and a little bit adventurous today with some Nutella. And of course, coffee. What's going on guys? You're back with the voiceover this week because I didn't really feel like sitting in front of the camera. I'm going to be talking about compound exercises versus isolation exercises for hypertrophy, and whether or not compounds are the king of muscle growth. And there's a common misconception that compounds are the best way to build size. But the reality is we can build muscle without compounds, because every exercise within our training program is a stimulus and will initiate an adaptation process, and the body adapts according to the specific stimulus imposed. So compounds will lend themselves well to a certain stimuli, such as mechanical tension, which is load, and isolations lend themselves well to a different type of stimulus that's also important for hypertrophy, which is metabolic stress. So it's often asking the wrong question whether or not compounds or isolations are better for building muscle, because we can build muscle with both. However, both are useful tools in achieving a different type of stress on the body, which can have differing effects in terms of how we adapt and respond to training. A better question is, how do we balance compounds with isolations to maximize hypertrophy? So we need to first understand that in a hypertrophy program we need a couple of things. We need appropriate load, which will induce mechanical tension. We also need effort proximal to failure, and we need progressive overload, specifically in volume over time. And this is assuming that you're eating in a calorie surplus for the most part, with appropriate protein intake. So I'd like to say that, is there really such thing as an isolation movement? Because when you're doing a bicep curl, the deltoid is still playing a role, as are the stabilizers in the shoulder, the tricep. There really is, in my opinion, no such thing as an isolation movement, just exercises that use less muscle groups than others, and these are typically single joint movements. And to define what a compound is and what an isolation is, a compound movement is simply one or more joints, and an isolation movement would be a single joint. And there was a pretty cool study in 2016, which was a systematic review of 23 studies looking into whether or not single joint exercises are superior or inferior to multi-joint exercises. And this was by Gentile and others, and they reported there was no difference in lower and upper body limbs in hypertrophy or strength when they compared compounds versus isolations. And they looked at 23 studies, and the long-term studies comparing single joint exercises to multi-joint exercises for the upper limbs found no differences in hypertrophy or strength. And there were also no additional effects with single joint or isolation movements added to a multi-joint program. However, they did find that you may not need to include single joint exercises for hypertrophy and strength for upper and lower limbs, except for lumbar extensors or to correct muscle imbalances. So, I do agree that you can build muscle and strength without isolation movements. However, we need to look at things a little more broadly than take a reductionist approach to this and answer the question to whether or not multi-joint exercises are superior for building muscle as either yes or no. Because compounds are more fatiguing per unit of volume. And what I mean by this is 10 sets of squats is very different to 10 sets of leg extensions. And although researchers found that isolations are more fatiguing and create more muscle soreness, compounds will create a different type of fatigue, which is usually nervous system fatigue. And we know that the nervous system takes longer to recover than does muscle protein synthesis. And this again gives rise to some really important considerations when devising a hypertrophy program, because if we get all of our volume from compounds, we're likely going to be very fatigued, and this could limit how much volume we can accrue. And like I mentioned, we need to build and progressively overload the amount of volume that we can tolerate over time to build muscle. So, yes, compounds are very efficient, but isolations are really important, in my opinion, within a hypertrophy program, because you can achieve some volume, additional volume to your program that's less fatiguing, and assist in developing your overall physique for the smaller muscle groups that may not get as much stimulus from those compound movements, such as muscle groups like the side delts, the calves, the abs, the biceps and the triceps, depending on how you structure your program. But again, whether or not compounds or isolations are better for hypertrophy is really asking the wrong question. We need to just understand that they have a role within our program and are both useful tools. So when you're devising a program, some considerations you need to take into account are time, your leverages and structures, skill acquisition, the risk of injury of a particular exercise, how long you've been training, your individual response, as well as your preference. So when we talk about time, obviously compounds are very efficient. They're great bang for your buck exercises. You can stimulate a lot of muscle groups with one movement, such as the squat, like you're seeing me do now. You're recruiting the quads, the hamstrings, the glutes, when compared to, say, a leg extension, when you're only getting stimulus on the quads. So if you are time poor, like me, compound movements are a great way to accrue volume. However, if you have all the time in the world and you're somebody who loves spending time in the gym and you're not too fussed on whether it takes you 45 minutes or an hour and 45 minutes to train, then you can incorporate some isolation exercises to help make up your total training volume. When we talk about leverages and structures, we need to understand that we're not all built the same way. Some people are not well suited to big compound movements, especially if they're tall or their anthropometry is such that it doesn't allow them to meet the positional demands of a movement. And in these situations, it may be more beneficial to opt for isolation exercises because it'll increase the risk of injury. Obviously, multi-joint exercises, we use heavier loads and they require more skill, so it can be a wise decision for some people to opt for isolation movements because of this. And I really don't think that a hypertrophy program is complete without incorporating some isolation exercises. Also, we need to look at, training age. If you feel like me and you've been training for a while, you're going to have some weak points, and those weak points may require some direct attention from isolation exercises, because for me, I can't hit my lateral delts from just bench pressing. I need to directly train them to make sure that I'm hypertrophying them, because they're not getting enough stimulus in my compound movements. Also, individual response is really important. So you see me perform some calf raises now. I don't need to do a hell of a lot of calf work because genetically I have big calves. However, I'm trying my best to be diligent and follow the program that's been written for me. So I will be incorporating some direct work for the calves, because Team No Calves is not a team I want to be a part of. But more importantly, preference. If you like a movement, do it. If you don't like a movement and aren't going to be consistent to your training program, then don't do it. I like some isolation work, but I much prefer compounds as they're challenging and more time efficient. However, I can't perform only compound movements because to maximize my physique, I need to incorporate some isolation work, as well as the fact that I will be too fatigued if all I did was squat, bench, and deadlift. I need to have some smaller, less fatiguing exercise in there to achieve the amount of volume I need to progress. So, are compounds king? I'm not going to tell you that. You can make up your own mind based on the information I've given you, but they're a great tool, but like all tools in our toolbox, have a time and place. They're not the only way to get the job done, especially when it comes to muscle hypertrophy. So guys, I hope that was informative. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll speak to you all next time.